Hi, explorers of the curious. Have you ever wondered what it's like to live in a small American town?
No bars, no restaurants, the nearest gas station is 15 minutes away, and the supermarket?
A solid half-hour drive.
Oh, and forget nightlife. Here, the most exciting event is counting how many mailboxes outnumber the residents. Today, on Explore and Discover Curious World, we're taking a quirky journey through 3 American towns where time seems to stand still, and monotony is the only entertainment in town. But don't be fooled by the peace and quiet. Behind the facade lie curious stories, bizarre characters, and details that will raise an eyebrow or two.
And hey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible tidbits from around the world.
First town, the rust of the American dream. Our first stop is a town of about 8,000 residents, where everything revolves around
a traffic light. Yes, you heard that right. Here, traffic is so rare that a simple intersection becomes the community's beating heart.
Surrounding it is a historic downtown built in a Wild West style to attract tourists. Spoiler alert, it's not working. The only visitors appear to be motorcyclists already tipsy at 8 a.m. Cheers to America.
But let's dig deeper.
Here, the average age is 64 years, and many residents live in mobile homes, prefab houses that look like a mix of Legos and RVs.
An interesting fact? 95% of people own their homes.
Sure, we're not talking about Hollywood mansions, but still, it's a rarity by American standards. And what about entertainment?
Well, there's a large church and a basketball court. The cinema? It screens movies so old they might as well be considered historical artifacts. So, if you're looking for adrenaline, this isn't the place for you.
Second town, the Wild West of mailboxes. Welcome to the second town. Population, 200 souls. Here, every resident seems to be part of a mysterious church that could easily double as a cult. The building is listed as historic, meaning it receives funding, but from where?
Nobody really knows. The vibe is more eerie than welcoming. Living here is like participating in a social experiment.
The nearest supermarket is 25 minutes away, the gas station is 15 minutes, and there isn't a single restaurant or fast food joint in sight. If you're craving pizza, better gear up for a road trip. Oh, and the community is very, very territorial. A friendly local suggested I disappear quickly.
Message received, I left.
But there's a curious detail, the number of mailboxes far exceeds the number of residents. Why? Perhaps it's a relic of a more prosperous past, or a sign of an impressive magazine subscription habit. Third town, the square dream. And finally, we arrive at the third town, a metropolis of 40,000 residents, completely designed on paper about 50 years ago. Here, everything is neat, symmetrical, and a bit unsettling. The roads are wide, the houses perfectly aligned, and the center is filled with everything you need: supermarkets, restaurants, and, of course, the ever-present McDonald's.
But what happens if you look for a job? I decided to find out by applying for a position at Pizza Hut as a shift leader. The pay?
Around $3,000 a month after taxes.
Not bad, right?
But beware, rents start at $900 a month, and with rising living costs, there's little room for luxuries.
It's a modest yet stable life.
The most interesting thing is that 90% of the population here moved from other cities, perhaps in search of a quieter life. But is it really the peaceful haven they imagined? Extended reflection: could you really live here? 3 minutes before we dive into comparisons, let's pause and ask ourselves, what does it truly mean to live in one of these towns? Sure, there's peace and quiet, but there's also a sense of isolation. Imagine waking up every morning to the same routine, with no new faces, no unexpected encounters, and no bustling city life to shake things up.
Yet, there's a charm to this simplicity.
You know your neighbors, sometimes a little too well, and there's a sense of community that big cities often lack.
It's the kind of place where people wave at you just because they can, and not because they're trying to flag down a taxi. But the flip side is obvious: these towns are not for everyone.
If you thrive on cultural diversity, fast-paced living, and late-night sushi runs, these small towns might feel like stepping into a time machine, without the cool part where you meet dinosaurs or futuristic robots. Would the lack of constant stimulation drive you crazy, or would it feel like a breath of fresh air? Let's move on to see how these small towns stack up against their big city counterparts. Comparison: big cities versus small towns. Now, let's put everything into perspective. Think about a big city like New York or Los Angeles: chaotic traffic, sky-high rent, but endless opportunities. You can grab sushi at 3 a.m., attend impromptu art shows, or meet people from every corner of the globe. Sure, the noise is constant, and time always seems to slip away, but the energy of the metropolis is contagious.
Now, compare that to life in these small towns. Time seems to stretch endlessly.
You can spend hours stargazing, chatting with the few neighbors around, or pondering the mystery of the church cult dominating the community. Traffic?
Non-existent.
Costs?
Much lower.
But beware, boredom lurks around every corner, and opportunities are so scarce that you might have to settle for a job at Pizza Hut just to stay busy. So, which is the better choice?
It all depends on you.
Do you crave the chaotic energy of a big city or the tranquility of the countryside? Cultural diversity or deeply rooted traditions?
Innovation or simplicity? Each option has its pros and cons, and there's no right answer.
So, dear explorers, that's our journey through the two extremes of American life. Would you be willing to move to one of these small towns, or do you prefer the chaos of big cities?
Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to explore and discover Curious World.
Every week, we bring you absurd, fascinating, and incredible stories from around the world.
See you on the next adventure.
So guys, if you had to choose, would you go for the hustle and bustle of a big city or the serenity of small town life?
And what would you miss most from the other world?
Let me know in the comments. I can't wait to read your thoughts. This expanded version includes extra reflection and detail to ensure it comfortably fills the 10-minute runtime. Before we wrap up, let's take a moment to reflect on what this all really means. These small towns might seem like relics of a bygone era, but they also represent a lifestyle many people still cherish. In a world that's constantly racing forward, where notifications and deadlines never stop, perhaps there's something to admire about the slower pace of these communities. So, as you think about these towns, ask yourself, could you slow down enough to embrace this way of life?
Or does the thought of living miles from the nearest coffee shop send shives down your spine?
Every choice comes with trade-offs, and in the end, it's about what makes you feel at home.